In this video, we're going to focus on naming esters. So here's our first example. Esters have two oxygens, and it contains one carbonyl group. That's the carbon double bonded to the oxygen. Now there's two parts that you want to focus on. The portion that has both oxygens, including the carbonyl group, and the other part. Notice on the right, we have 3 carbon atoms, 1, 2, 3. On the left, we have only 2. Now make sure you know the names of the first 10 carbons. For example, an alkane with 1 carbon is methane, 2 carbons ethane, 3 propane, 4 butane, 5 pentane, 6 hexane, 7 heptane, 8 octane, 9 nonane, 10 decane. Make sure you know that. So the 3 carbons on the right is going to be called ethyl with the end in YL. I mean, not ethyl, I take that back. Ethyl's 2 carbons. Propyl, since there's 3 carbons. Now, on the left, we have 2 carbons. Now, it won't be ethyl, but it's going to have the end in OH. So, it's called ethanoate. That's the portion on the left side. Now, when we put it together, the ethanoate should come at the end. So to name it, it's called propyl ethanoate. This is the IUPAC name. Or you can say propyl ethanoate. The common name for this is propyl acetate. If you want to convert the IUPAC name to a common name, there's some things you need to know. Whenever you see ethanoate, you can replace it with the common name acetate. Now, if you were to see, let's say, methanoate, you can replace it with the common name formate. And typically, if you see butanoate, the common name for that is, it doesn't really change much, but it's like butyrate. Now let's work on some more examples. So let's say if you have an ester that looks like this. What is the name for that ester? So feel free to pause the video, take a minute, and work on this example. See if you can come up with the name for this ester. So let's separate it into 2 portions. So on the right, this is 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the part that don't have the 2 oxygens. So that part, we're going to name it first. 4 is associated with butane, so we're going to replace ane with the suffix yl. So this is going to be butyl. And on the left side, we have 3 carbon atoms, 1, 2, 3. 3 is associated with propane, but since that's going to be the parent name of the functional group, we're going to add the OA part. So it's going to be propanoate. Butyl propanoate. So that's how you name it. Here is another example for you. Try this one. What is the name for this particular ester? What is the IUPAC name and also the common name? So let's separate it into two parts. So this is the part that have both oxygens, and here is the other part. So the part that don't have both oxygens has two carbons, so we're going to name that first. 2 is associated with ethane, but we're going to add the suffix YL, and we're going to replace A and E with YL. So instead of saying ethane, we're going to say ethyl. And now for the portion on the left, the one that has the two oxygen atoms, we only have one carbon. So one carbon is associated with the name methane, but we're going to replace A and E with O8. So it's going to be methanoate. I guess we're really replacing just the E portion of the A and E part to be more accurate. Now, that's the IUPAC name, ethyl methanoate. What is the common name? Remember, we can replace methanoate with formate, so we can also call this ethyl formate. Go ahead and try this one. So once again, we're going to separate it into two parts. So on the right side, we have two carbons, so that's called ethyl. And on the left side, we still have two carbons. That's going to be ethanoate. That's the IUPAC name, ethyl ethanoate. The common name, we can replace ethanoate with acetate. So it's ethyl acetate. So let's separate into two parts. On the left, we have 5 carbon atoms, and on the right, we have 4. So what is the name of this particular ester? So the part that doesn't have the 2 oxygen atoms is on the left, and that's the part we want to name first. 5 is associated with pentane, but we're going to replace ane with YL. So this is going to be called pentyl. And on the right, we have 4 carbons, and that has the 2 oxygen atoms, so it's going to have the O8. So instead of saying butane, we're going to say butanoate. Now, if you want to write the common name from the IUPAC name, if you see butanoate, you can replace it with butyrate. So this is pentyl butyrate. Now, how about this one? Go ahead and name this particular ester. What do you think the answer is? So once again, we're going to separate it into two parts. So this is the part without the 2 oxygens, and this is the part with the 2 oxygens. The left side is called phenyl. Phenyl is basically a benzene ring as a substituent. Benzyl is a benzene ring with an extra carbon attached to it. So phenyl contains 6 carbon atoms. Benzyl, which is basically what we have here, contains 7 carbon atoms. It's the ring plus the carbon on the outside. So instead of saying benzyl, we're going to have to put the O8 part in it. So this is called phenyl benzoate. And that's basically the name of this structure. Now what about this one? What do you think the name of this molecule will be? How can we name this particular ester? So here, this part has the 2 oxygen atoms, and this side does not. So let's start with the side that doesn't have the 2 oxygen atoms. We're going to name that first. So this part is the ethyl, and on the left we have a benzene ring plus an extra carbon, so that's the benzoate part. That's the parent name, which we need to write last. So it's going to be called ethyl benzoate. The O8 part should always be written at the end, so make sure you do that. Now it's your turn. Go ahead and work on this example. Let's say we have a CH3 attached to a carbonyl group and attached to a benzene ring. So how can we name this particular example? So the benzene ring is the portion of the ester that doesn't have the 2 oxygens. The other part has the 2 oxygens. So this is going to be phenyl because it only has 6 carbons and not 7, so it's not benzyl. And the other one has 2 carbons, 1, 2. So instead of saying ethyl, we're going to say ethanoate. This time, the ethanoate goes at the end, as always, but phenyl comes in the beginning. So it's going to be phenyl ethanoate. So that is the IUPAC name. What's the common name for this? Well, since we have a ethanoate, we can replace it with acetate. So the common name is phenyl acetate. Now let's work on some more complicated examples. Let's say if we have an ester with a complex substituent. How can we name it? So the portion of the ester that has both oxygen atoms is this part. And this one is by itself. So let's start naming the part that doesn't have the 2 oxygen atoms. So that's going to be called methyl. Now what about the part that has the 2 oxygen atoms? Now the first thing you want to do is identify the longest chain, starting from the carbonyl group. So we have 3 carbons. And the parent name is going to be, instead of propane, propanoate. Now notice that we have a substituent or a methyl group on carbon 2. And that methyl group is not associated with the left side but the right side. So it's associated or should be attached to the propanoate. So it's going to be 2-methyl propanoate. And we can write that together. Whenever you need to separate a number and a letter, use a hyphen. You don't need to separate 2 letters, by the way. So this is it, methyl 2-methyl propanoate. That's how you name it. So now let's work on another example. Try this one. So let's separate it into 2 parts. So the left side has the 2 oxygen atoms, and the right side does not. So we have 2 carbon atoms on the right side. On the left, the longest chain is 4 carbons. So let's start with the right side, the part that doesn't have the 2 oxygen atoms. So that's simply called ethyl. The longest chain for the part that has the two oxygen atoms has 4 carbons, so instead of saying butane, it's going to be butanoate. And we have a methyl on carbon 3. So we're going to say it's 3-methyl butanoate. So the whole name is ethyl 3-methyl butanoate. Now what about this one? How can we name this particular ester? So once again, let's separate it into 2 parts. This is the portion that has the 2 oxygens, and this is the part that doesn't have the 2 oxygens. So let's name the right side first. Since it's a complex substituent, we need to count the longest chain, which is 4 carbons. And we have to deal with this methyl group on carbon 3. Now, for a 4-carbon chain, instead of saying butane, it's going to be butyl. But we have a methyl in 3, so it's going to be 3-methyl butyl. On the left side, we only have 2 carbons. So that's going to be called ethanoate, or acetate if you want to write it that way. So this is the IUPAC name for that particular molecule. Let's try another example. Go ahead and work on this example. So on the left, we have a 3-carbon chain and a methyl on carbon 2. And it doesn't have the 2 oxygen atoms, so this is the first thing we're going to name. So it's 2-methyl, and there's 3 carbons in a parent chain, so that's going to be propyl. And now this is the parent name of the molecule, and there's only 1 carbon there, which is associated with methane, so that's going to be methanoate. So combined, this ester is called 2-methyl propyl methanoate. Try this one. Let's begin by separating it. So this is the part that has the 2 oxygens, and this is the part that doesn't have it. So let's start with the part that doesn't have it. As we can see, we only have 2 carbons, so that is going to be called ethyl. Now for the part that has it, there's 3 carbons. So we're going to have the name, instead of propane, propanoate. Now we have an OH group on carbon 2. What is an OH group called as a substituent, since the parent name is the ester? It's going to be called hydroxy. So it's 2-hydroxypropanoate. And of course with the ethyl in front. So the whole thing is ethyl 2-hydroxypropanoate. Try that one. Go ahead and name this particular molecule. So let's focus on the ester. The portion of the ester that has the 2 oxygens is the portion on the left side, and the right side just have 2 carbons, 1, 2. So we're going to name the part that doesn't have the 2 oxygens first. So once again, that's ethyl. Now for the part that has the 2 oxygens, let's count the longest chain. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Make sure you count it starting from the ester functional group. So 7 is associated with heptane, but we're going to use the word heptanoate. Now we have 2 substituents. We have a chloro group on carbon 4. And what is a ketone as a substituent? A ketone is called oxo, OXO, and that's on carbon 5, but we need to alphabetize it. C comes before O. So it's going to be 4-chloro 5-oxo heptanoate. And so that's how we can name this particular molecule. Here's another one for you. Try this one. Take a minute, pause the video, and work out this example. See what name you come up with, and then unpause the video when you're ready to see the answer. So let's go ahead and begin. Let's name the part of the molecule that doesn't have the 2 oxygen atoms, and that is the portion on the right side. The left side has the 2 oxygen atoms of the ester. So let's count the longest chain for the right side. It's 4 carbons, and we have a bromo group on carbon 2. So we're going to say it's 2-bromo, and instead of saying butane, it's going to be butyl for the 4 carbons. So we're done with the first part of the molecule. Now let's move on to the second part. So let's count the longest chain. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have an ester with 5 carbons. So 5 is pentane, but instead of saying pentane, we're going to say pentanoate. Now we have an amino group on carbon 4 and a methoxy group on carbon 3. So this is going to be 4-amino, and I'm running out of space, so it's going to be -3-methoxy, and then pentanoate. So it's 2-bromo butyl 4-amino 3-methoxy pentanoate. And hopefully I got everything there. I'm trying to be careful and avoid mistakes, because when you have a complicated molecule, it's very easy to make a mistake. So now this is going to be the last example for today. How can we name this particular ester? So because we have 2 ester functional groups, it's going to be a dioate. Now the part in the middle is the part that is associated with the esters. It has the 2 oxygen atoms. So let's count those carbons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 is pentane. So the middle portion is called pentane dioate. And we have an ethyl on the right and an ethyl on the left. So we have 2 ethyl groups. So we could say it's diethyl pentane dioate. And I'm going to stop it here. So that is it for this video. Hopefully it's been useful to you and helping you to understand how to name esters and also some more complicated ester examples. So thanks for watching and have a great day.